Hey sports fans, are you ready for an exhilarating gaming experience? Introducing VIPclub.lv, your ultimate online sportsbook and casino. VIPclub.lv offers a vast selection of sports, from football and basketball to tennis and baseball. Bet on your favorite teams and enjoy the thrill of the game. But that's not all. Our state-of-the-art online casino offers a dazzling array of games, including slots, blackjack, roulette, and live dealer tables. Win big with their fantastic promotions, rewards, and exclusive offers. Join VIPclub.lv today and get a generous 200% match welcome bonus to start your winning streak. And make sure to use code ECSI at sign-up. Bet it, win it, and cash it at VIPclub.lv. Visit VIPclub.lv now and play responsibly. VIPclub.lv, your sportsbook and casino extravaganza. Must be 21 or older to play. Please gamble responsibly. Visit gambleware.org for help.
Good evening, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is the John Deere Classic with Brady Kannon. Wednesday, July 5th, 2023. Hopefully everyone had a great 4th of July. Happy Canada Day on Monday as we are getting closer to the Open in a few weeks, another major. I don't want to say an historic week this past weekend, but Brady knew where I was going last week's show, and he hit the nail right on the head for me in my 2-1 and dones. Of course, I doubled down on Ricky, but then I got scared a little and I took one of them off. But that's okay. 1 out of 2 isn't bad. But congrats to Team Puma. Ricky, what a resurgence, what a turnaround. And as I guarantee you, Mr. Cannon smiling ear to ear because he's sitting on, I think it's an 80-1 ticket, which has been cut drastically in half and even closer to 30 there. But we got the John Deere Classic. We got some names that the regulars aren't accustomed to at the top of the the pre-flop leaderboard at DraftKings. But I'm going to save that for the star of the show, the one and only Mr. Brady Kannon.
Mr. Dawson, how are you? And happy 4th of July to you as well. Another big week on the PGA Tour. This will be the 3rd week in a row that we are expecting a birdie fest. And we talked about that a little bit last week. We get to the Scottish Open next week, the final tune-up before the British Open. I would expect probably some lower scoring at both of those championships. You never know. We got a British Open last year that, gosh, what was it, 23 or something like that Cam Smith got to. So you never know. Sometimes there can be a lot of scoring across the pond there in those championships. But one more birdie fest stateside for sure at the John Deere. And before we get into it, Jeff, I want to say something about this tournament too. You know, it's always kind of cast aside as, a lesser tournament. Oh, it's the old John Deere Classic, blah, blah, blah. But really, it is a good tournament and a very good golf course. And it actually tests these players pretty well. I know, over the years, on average, we've gotten to about 21 under par. But the guys really like this course. It receives a ton of fan support. And it's one of the strongest sponsorships on the PGA Tour. The John Deere Company has been there for decades. So it's really a well-supported tournament in a lot of different ways, and I encourage people to tune in and watch. It's probably a lot better event than it typically gets credit for with the casual golf fan.
I remember decades ago at my grandfather's house, he had a big house with about 1.5 acres in the back, and he had his green John Deere ride mower. And when I got old enough, the privilege was to not just ride it, but to cut his lawn. And he would take all us grandkids and he'd have a trailer and we'd sit on it and he'd drive us around. So John Deere, as you see me smiling, goes hand in hand with, the memories of my grandfather and his John Deere tractor.
Nothing runs like a deer, right?
Absolutely not. Last weekend, fun tournament, great tournament. As you said, a birdie
What a
fest.
finish, right?
Oh, amazing. And to someone that didn't get involved in the pre-flop, You had a lot of opportunities to get involved each day, even leading up to Sunday. Some big names there. Before we recap the weekend, sitting down at Sunday in the office and looking at the numbers, just looking at the pure numbers, it looked like they were trying to give you the signal that Colin was going to win. He was going to catch him. What was your thoughts before they teed off on Sunday?
Well, they baited me into Colin Morikawa. I actually jumped on him on Friday night. I wrote an article for the PGA Tour, as I do every week on Friday after the cut. And Morikawa was one of the guys that I landed on that I thought would be making a charge over the weekend. And sure enough, he put together a heck of a charge, missed a birdie by that much on the final hole, which he would have won the tournament in regulation. Goes to the playoff. And then, of course, the heroics of Ricky Fowler took over. Just a wonderful finish, and happy for Ricky Fowler for sure. I wanted to cash that ticket with Colin Morikawa, Jeff, obviously, but I was also kind of a little bit not wanting Ricky to win because you mentioned it earlier. I have that ticket on Ricky at 80-1 to win the British Open. And I was thinking, I don't want him to get that win just yet. But then upon further review, after he won that event, I said, you know what? Maybe it's actually good that he did get the win, because if he would have come up short, that could have been damaging. And if he finds himself in contention in a couple of weeks at the British Open, you know, he could maybe have some bad thoughts about not being able to close the deal. Now that he's done it for the first time in nearly 4.5 years, I think that probably frees him up a little bit the next time he's in that situation. We saw him come up short when he was in the lead on Sunday, going into Sunday at the U.S. Open, and, you know, shot a 75 and kind of went sideways there. But he got the job done, finished the job here in heroic fashion with a birdie on 18 and then a birdie on the first playoff hole from not necessarily great positions, you know, off the fairway as well, and stuck both of those shots in there tight. But you know, again, going back upon further review, I think it's maybe good for my British Open bet that he was able to close this deal, because if he finds himself in that situation again, I think this will give him the confidence rather than the lack of confidence had he failed again.
I 100% agree. The swag is back. The tempo of his gait. You know, he would drop down to almost 200. I think it was 180 something in the rankings. What's wrong with Ricky? He's all done. Yada yada yada. And some people that are not as strong mentally would have just folded the tent. And he just kept battling and battling. And I know Scotty Scheffler from Tee to Green is the best golfer. He's doing Tiger things. But the story in my eyes right now on July 6th for this year's PGA is definitely the resurgence of Mr. Ricky Fowler.
I agree with you. And I actually mentioned it in another article I wrote this week, that if you can find a player of the year market, PGA Tour player of the year, if you can bet on that, it might be a good time to take a stab with Ricky Fowler. I don't know if that market exists, to be honest with you. I kind of have a feeling it doesn't, but maybe somebody can find it out there. If he wins the British Open, I think he's going to be player of the year. So, and I think he's got a good shot to win the British Open. Certainly better than 80-1. You mentioned those odds cut in half. I've seen 25. I even saw as low as 16-1 to win the British Open after he won the Rocket Mortgage. So again, just another thought out there to your point. If you can find a market, I think Ricky is a good bet to win PGA Tour Player of the Year.
As I was looking at the names last week and I mispronounced it, and you caught right up on it. And I like to say a flash and fade. He came out, he's living up to his name, and I'm going to hopefully pronounce it better today. Ludwig Adberg.
Close? Yeah, Ludwig Aberg.
Aberg. Okay. Got some raving reviews last weekend.
Absolutely. No, the kid is no joke. And, you know, I was just introducing myself to him and his career as well when I was doing my work last week. And he went to Texas Tech. He was the first two-time Ben Hogan Award winner since John Rahm. And what that is, it is awarded to the best college player in America, the best college golfer in America. And you think about that, the first guy to win that twice since John Rahm. I mean, if you're in that conversation, that's pretty darn good. This guy's obviously ascended to number one in the world, won a U.S. Open and a Masters. And I don't know if Aberg is headed for that type of territory, but he's certainly off to a good start. That was just his third professional event last week at the Rocket Mortgage. And after 36 holes, he was only one shot out of the lead. But in that same article where I wrote that I would like to back Colin Morikawa, I wrote that I would actually fade Aberg because he was getting it all done off the tee. He's a tremendous driver of the golf ball. Through 36 holes, he was leading that field last week in driving distance and driving accuracy. Think about that combination. If you can hit it, further than everyone else and straighter than everyone else, that's a pretty good place to start. Everything else he was doing, though, was a little bit shaky on approach and with the putter. And I felt, he was not going to be able to win this tournament necessarily with just the driver. And sure enough, over the weekend, we saw him fall off the pace. But no worries. I think this guy is headed for stardom. If he gets the iron game and the putting together, I mean, he's only 3 tournaments into his professional career. We're already critiquing him. I'm sure he'll get. I mean, you don't win College Player of the Year twice without having a decent putter and a decent iron game. So I'm sure he'll be just fine, and we'll probably see a lot more of him here in the near future.
Looking at DraftKings right now, the plus 1,400, the favorite Russell Henley. Then comes Cameron Young at 16-1. Denny McCarthy seems like the social media darling this week at 18-1. A sneaky name I'm hearing whispers of, Adam Hadwin at 28-1. Stephen Yeager at 3,000. Ludwig at plus 3,000 with Amelia Grillo and Adam Schenk. Taylor Moore at 3,500, Keith Mitchell 3,500, with also Eric Cole and Chris Kirk. Not your normal names you see up there, and obviously not an elevated event as we often been talking about. Thoughts initially when, for the novice to take a look at this and say, whoa, where's Rory? Where's John? Where's Scotty Scheffler?
Well, it like you say, the John Deere has for many, many years been an event that the star players typically did not attend because it was always the week before the British Open. Now, the field has improved because this is the second year in a row that it is 2 weeks before the Open. It is now just 1 week before the Scottish Open. So the field actually has gotten better the last couple of years, but obviously still missing some of that major star power, but not a bad field. I mean, all those names that you just rattled off. I mean, Adam Hadwin was in that playoff last week with Morikawa and Fowler. Chris Kirk is a winner this year on the PGA Tour. Denny McCarthy's come awful close. Adam Schenk is really having a career year. He was really a guy that you could classify as a PGA Tour journeyman, but he's ascended all the way to 51st in the world with a 7th place at the Memorial, a 7th place last week in Detroit, a runner-up finish at the Valspar Championship, and a loss in a playoff at Colonial. So this guy's having a career year, and he actually made my list this week. You talk about some of the social media darlings. It's a lot of guys from that list that you just read off that I've seen a lot of people on this week. And it's a very unpredictable tournament. It ranks pretty high on the PGA Tour calendar as far as unpredictability. And I think one of the reasons or one of the results of that is we see a number of first-time winners here. We've seen all kinds of guys get their first PGA Tour victory at the John Deere, including Bryson DeChambeau and Jordan Spieth. And last year, JT Poston, not last year. That was not his first victory. But I saw something this week that it's been like 8 out of the last 16 or something like that, like 50% of the recent tournaments. The guy that is winning, it's his first PGA Tour career victory. So I think that probably lends to the unpredictability of the event. You're not just necessarily looking for guys that typically play well here or have won here in the past. It's more often than not a newbie.
Before I turn it over to you, a name that sticks out like the sore thumb, and a good friend of mine, good colleague, each week wants to autoplay him first round leader and to win. He just can't seem to win is Cameron Young. If you had to describe what's going on, what is going on with Cameron Young?
I don't necessarily know what's going wrong with him, but he has been struggling for, I want to say, about a month or so now. And, it was right when he got that new caddy. And I'm trying to remember his name off the top of my head, but it was Webb Simpson's old caddy. And they parted ways after a long, very successful relationship, amicable separation there. And Webb was kind enough to kind of turn him over to Cam Young, who also went to Wake Forest like Webb Simpson did. And I want to say it was the match play event was maybe the first or second event that I think this new caddy was on the bag for Cameron Young. And he was guns a-blazing. I think he went to the finals in the match play, if I recall, and lost to Sam Burns. But then, a couple weeks after that, he started to go south and he hasn't returned yet. And he certainly may play well here. I think this is probably a good tune-up for him to play an easier golf course where he can make some shots and get some confidence back. But I don't think the nature of the layout here, TPC Deere Run in Silvis, Illinois, is a great course suited for Cameron Young. The strength of Cameron Young's game is off the tee. It's kind of like Ludwig Abert. Both of these guys, I think, fit into a similar category this week. They are money, a couple of the very best in the world off the tee with a driver in their hand. But this course, everybody's going to be able to hit the fairways. The fairways are pretty wide. And so much about winning here this week is going to be from 150 yards in. You've got to have your approach game on from 100 to 75 yards with the wedges and the short irons, and then you've got to be able to putt. So this golf tournament is really going to start from 150 yards in, and that kind of eliminates guys that really dominate off the tee. So I don't think this is a great week for Cameron Young to necessarily win. It's probably a good week for him to maybe get some things worked out and see if he can get everything straightened out for when we go across the pond, where he absolutely contended for a British Open championship last year.
All right, the fairway's yours. You're at tee box number 1, outrights, head-to-head, first-round leaders. It's all yours.
All right. Well, I will start with the outright winners. And I, of course, also play these for a top 20 finish. Had a pretty good week last week. I missed on Morikawa, the in-game bet, but I did have 3 guys finish top 20. And I'm actually landing on a few of the same guys this week, Jeff. A lot of the correlated courses that I used are similar or the same. I think this week, the golf course, TPC Deere Run, does have a lot of similarities to Detroit Golf Club that we saw last week. I mentioned the golf tournament beginning from 150 yards in. Last week, I was looking at hole proximity from 75 to 150 yards. That's where the majority of the approach shots came from last week. Exactly the same this week. More than half of them, a good percentage, are going to come from that window as well. So again, I landed on some of the same players. I mentioned Adam Schenk. Some of the correlated courses I used, one was Colonial, where he lost in a playoff earlier this year. I mentioned he was runner-up at the Valspar, the 7th place finish at Memorial, and also last week at Detroit, another correlated course. He's 9th in this field over the last 36 rounds for strokes gained approach and 12th in birdies or better gained. I think just the way he is playing, the way he finished last week, had a good round on Sunday to climb into the top 10. What he's been doing this year and how he fits this golf course, I think he makes a lot of sense. I got him at 32-1, and he has been a very popular pick this week, but I can't argue with it. Stefan Jager at 35-1, another guy you mentioned. I was on him last week. He did cash a top 20 for us. He shot a 63 on Sunday to get into the top 10. And I like when a guy finishes with a round like that. Hopefully some of that momentum carries over into this week. And the knock on Stefan Jager has always been his putter. But in shooting that 63 on Sunday for that round, he was number 1 in the Rocket Mortgage field for strokes gained putting and finished 26th overall in that field. That's the 3rd time in 4 weeks that he has finished top 30 in the field for strokes gained putting. So the putting is definitely turning around for Stefan Jager. I think he's got a heck of a shot again this week. Chris Kirk, another guy that I was on last week and finished top 20 for us. I got him at 35-1. And basically the same reasoning here, Jeff. This guy is the very best in the field from 75 to 150 yards. He's number one in hole proximity from 125 to 150. He's number 3 from 100 to 125. And he's number 7 from 75 to 100. So he just has those wedges and short irons dialed in. He's a very good putter. Over the last 36 rounds on bent grass, he is 26th in this field for strokes gained putting. Alex Smalley, yet another guy I landed on last week. I've got him at 40-1. He did not finish top 20 for us last week. He did make the cut. He ended up finishing 47th. But in 4 of his last 7 starts, he's finished top 25. And he is number 1 in this field for strokes gained approach and strokes gained ball striking his last 36 rounds. So just like last week looked like a good fit, the golf course, it looks like for the second week in a row, it should be a very good fit for what his game is all about. And then Patrick Rogers at 43-1. You know, he hails from nearby Indiana. So I think this tournament kind of means something special to him being in the Midwest. And he did finish runner-up here in 2017. He is 27th in this field for scrambling, 29th in this field for ball striking the last 36 rounds. And also interesting to note, on easy courses, the last 36 rounds played on easy courses, he ranks 12th in this field for strokes gained total. So Patrick Rogers at 43-1. And then my final play here on Byung-Hoon An, Benny An at 49-1. He is not a great putter, but he is a very good ball striker, and he can get streaky at times with the putter. He seems to make birdies in bunches. He is number 1 in this field for scrambling. He is 6th in hole proximity from 100 to 125 yards, 23rd from 125 to 150, and he is 11th in strokes gained ball striking, all of that over the last 36 rounds. So this is really a ball striker's course. 150 yards in, you better be spot on, and then hopefully you find a hot putter. And those are my 6 outrights and top 20 for this week.
I forgot to ask you, Mr. Sherman's under over. Do you know what that is this week?
262.5, and I played it over. I think now what you're going to find is probably some very low scores on Thursday, Jeff. It's supposed to be raining there today, even hailing possibly at this golf course in Silvis, Illinois today. So you should have, once again, for the 3rd week in a row, a soft and gettable golf course. But I think this one is going to play a little bit tougher. I think it's got a little bit more quirk in it than did Detroit and did TPC River Highlands. And we don't have certainly the field that we had at River Highlands, and really not as good a field as we had in Detroit either. So I think 19 or 20 is going to win it. Jeff Sherman's prop is telling us that if you want to play under 262.5, you're saying that 22 under par will win this tournament. I could see it being 21 or less. Over the last 13 seasons, the average winning score here has been about 21.3, so less than 21.5, and I'm going to bank on that continuing.
I like where your eyes are there. We're going to get Mr. Sherman this week. So.
Oh, good. Say hi to him. He's a good friend of mine.
What's easier, head-to-head or first-round leaders?
Well, I can do both. It's actually pretty simple this week. I've got 4 head-to-head matchups. Ben An, Byung-Hoon An at -110 over Seamus Power. Some of these numbers may have changed. I know some of them have for sure. Adam Schenk, I got at +105 over Ludwig Aberg, and I saw Schenk move to the position of the favorite. At last look, he was about -120, which I still don't have a problem with. Stefan Jager at -115 over Eric Cole, and then Alex Smalley at -105 over Eric Cole. I've seen that one move a lot into the neighborhood of like -140 over Eric Cole, which is pretty expensive. I don't know if I'd go there. But I would say -125, maybe a cap there for Alex Smalley over Eric Cole. And then first round leader, I picked 4 guys out of my outright market and went with them as well. Chris Kirk, we spoke about his prowess from 150 yards in. I mentioned he's 26th for strokes gained putting on bent grass. He's also 21st in strokes gained approach and 15th in scrambling rather. Adam Schenk, another guy that I'm on outright, he's 50th on the PGA Tour in first round scoring average, 50th for strokes gained putting on bent grass, 40th for first round scoring average. Stefan Jager is 6th in first round scoring average, got him at 50-1. Kirk and Schenk are both at 45. Jager at 50. He is 30th in this field for strokes gained putting. And, I mentioned that he has finished in the top 30 3 out of the last 4 weeks for strokes gained putting. He's 6th on tour in first round scoring average. And then finally, I landed on Patrick Rodgers as well. I mentioned how he does on the easy golf courses. Also very interesting in first rounds this year, in opening rounds on Thursday, since January, Patrick Rodgers has gained 1 or more strokes on the field putting 6 times. And I'll give you the method to my madness here, landing on the same guys, 4 of them out of the 6 that I did to win the entire tournament. Most of the time, what gets a player to the top of the leaderboard on Thursday is strokes gained approach and strokes gained putting. Those are the 2 areas where you will see them elevate above the field more so than any other skill set in a first round leader situation. Now, for this particular tournament, I believe those 2 skill sets are what are going to take you to the leaderboard on Sunday as well. Now, I think this is true for, I won't say a lot of tournaments, but certainly some tournaments where the macro handicap is very similar to that isolated handicap that we're looking at for just Thursday. And in this case, maybe the 2 most important areas. We talked about the whole proximity from 75 to 150, strokes gained approach, the short game, the scrambling, the putting. I think that's what this tournament's going to come down to. And these 4 guys, Kirk, Jager, Smalley, Kirk, Schenk, Jager, and Rodgers are all really good in those areas.
And what was Rodgers' price?
Also at 50-1.
50-1. All right. You talked about next week, the Scottish Open. Assume most of the top guns will be there to get ready for the British Open. Is that correct?
I would assume so, yeah. You're probably going to have a few guys that aren't there, but I would say, and that's interesting too. Some guys don't like to play the week before a major. So I'm sure the guys that aren't necessarily taking part in the Scottish, you would think that they're already making the trip overseas to acclimate to the time change and what have you, and maybe get in some practice rounds at some other courses or maybe even at Royal Liverpool. But I think for the most part, you're probably going to have a pretty stacked field there for the Scottish.
And then the following week at the Open, correct?
Royal Liverpool, they call the area Hoy Lake. It was 2014 that we last saw this course on the British Open Rota. Rory McIlroy, the last time he has won a major championship, he was hoisting the Claret Jug in 2014. And oh, by the way, who finished second? Our man, Ricky Fowler. And then you go back to 2006, another 8 years prior to the 2014 edition. Tiger Woods won at Hoy Lake, and I think famously he never hit a ball into a bunker that entire week. He was just absolute money off the tee. And there's a guy that is actually going to play in the 2023 British Open at Hoy Lake, who also played in 2006 and 2014. And he finished top 10 in both of those previous editions. And I've also got a ticket on him at 80-1, and that is Adam Scott. We'll see if the Australian can make some moves over at Hoy Lake in 2023, the same way he did in 06 and 14.
The year you said that Tiger didn't hit a bunker, was that the same year that he did not use the driver the whole tournament too, or is that somewhere else?
That might be. I know he hit a lot of 3-woods and stinger 2-irons and stuff like that. Now the course has changed a little bit. I don't know. I can't recall if it changed at all from 2006 to 2014, but from 14 to 23, there have been some adjustments. So I don't think it'll necessarily play exactly the same. I'm sure it'll play very similarly, but probably most of all an adjustment to the more modern game, I would imagine. But I know what you're talking about, and it may have been the same event where he never hit driver and never hit a bunker all week. I can't recall for sure, but I'm almost positive it was at Hoy Lake in 06 when he never found himself in a bunker.
The scroller's been going the whole time. If you're not following, please go to Twitter at Las Vegas Golfer, and also check him out at Heat Strokes Pod. You can find him at Golf Bet, at PGA Tours, and Sports Grid tonight. Correct, sir?
Sports Grid tonight, 10:15 Eastern Time.
All right. Anywhere else? I did see your podcast was up on YouTube earlier. Who was your guest?
Adam Chernoff was my guest host, who I know you're familiar with. And then Sia Najad was our guest picker. We always have kind of a celebrity guest picker, if you will. They don't contribute on air, but they do contribute with some very sharp picks. And last week, we actually hit Ricky Fowler, my co-host Johnny D. Simone from Canada. He landed correctly on Fowler. And our guest picker, Lou Ford from Detroit, Michigan, we brought him on with it being the Detroit Golf Club there in Michigan. He was on Adam Hadwin. So, and of course, mid-tournament, I landed on Colin Morikawa. We had it surrounded there in the playoff, and D. Simone walked away with the cash.
Well, I can't thank you enough. We can't thank you enough. We also want you to have a safe travel and trip next week. Enjoy yourself. We will catch up to you at some point next week. Same time, same bat channel. Everyone go over to Sports Grid tonight, 10:15. Catch Brady Kannon on there as well. So from myself, Jeff Dawson at DC Sports Invest, from Brady Kannon at Las Vegas Golfer, we wish everyone a great, great evening. Cash some tickets. 2 weeks away from the Open. Have some fun. See you soon.